Imagine you're caught outside on the coldest night you've ever experienced. Your breath freezes midair, your fingers and toes feel like ice blocks, and every layer you've got on might as well be tissue paper. Now picture yourself doing that not for a few hours, but for days, weeks even, without modern heating, insulated homes, or sleeping bags. Welcome to the brutal, frost-bitten world of the Vikings, where the snow wasn't just a freezing problem, it was an opportunity. How did these fearless Nordic warriors survive temperatures plunging below -30 degrees F, endure storms that could freeze you solid in minutes, and somehow turn snow itself into a heat source that lasted up to 72 hours? Spoiler alert, it was something far stranger than you'd expect. This might be the strangest Viking survival trick you've never heard of. Forget wood fires and animal pelts. These Norsemen mastered turning what we consider the ultimate freezing enemy, snow, into a source of sustained warmth. It sounds bonkers, right? But by cleverly using snow's unique properties, they managed to create their own natural thermal batteries that could keep a camp warm, dry, and surprisingly cozy for days on end. Think of it as the medieval version of a 1,000-watt space heater, except it ran on snow. Before we dive in, picture this. It's late winter in Scandinavia. The ground is covered in 2 feet of packed snow. Wind howls like a pack of wolves, and any mistake means hypothermia or worse. Somehow these Vikings hunkered down, survived the night, and even thrived through the long, dark season. How? Let's unravel this together. First off, the Vikings used snow as an insulating blanket. Now we know snow is cold and wet, but packed snow is actually a surprisingly effective insulator. It's mostly made of tiny ice crystals trapping pockets of air that stops heat from escaping, similar to what scientists today call thermal resistance. When the Vikings burrowed into 2 feet or more of dense snow, they were essentially wrapping themselves in nature's own Gore-Tex, a breathable but heat-trapping layer that blocked brutal winds and kept body heat from escaping into the Arctic night. Think about this like the difference between standing in a doorway during a blizzard versus getting inside a snow cave. Inside that cave, the trapped air pockets in the snow keep temperatures inside just a few degrees below freezing, instead of the bone-chilling -30 degrees F outside. So instead of fighting the elements head-on, they let the snow fight for them. Now, it might sound strange, but the Vikings took this one step further. They would pack down an area of snow and then light smoldering peat or moss underneath, carefully controlling the heat. This created a cozy little heat source that would warm the air trapped within the snow's insulation. Imagine turning snow into an ancient hot water bottle that slowly let off heat over 3 whole days. No wood, no electricity, just controlled smoldering that kept the temperature in their shelters surprisingly steady. This was possible because peat moss and certain types of tundra plants were abundant and slow-burning. Vikings used these as kindling in snow-dug pits, harnessing the slow combustion to release heat without blazing flames that would melt everything. It's a bit like using a slow cooker to make a stew that stays warm all day, except their slow cooker was a patch of snow with glowing embers underneath. So far, we have 2 clever Viking secrets: natural snow insulation that traps body heat and slow-burning natural ember fuel to keep that heat going like a low-energy heater in the middle of a frozen wasteland. But even with these, staying warm for 72 hours straight seems impossible. After all, humans lose a lot of heat through their beds and bodies at night. How did Vikings solve that? The answer lies in their use of animal fat and specially prepared bedding. They collected animal fat from seals, whales, and land mammals, which they rendered into thick, waxy layers acting like ancient bubble wrap. But instead of wrapping fragile electronics, this fat was smeared on animal hides and clothing to create windproof, waterproof layers that trapped heat against the skin. This coating helped limit heat loss by up to 40%, kind of like primitive Gore-Tex combined with thermal insulation. On top of that, Vikings would layer their bedding with thick pelts and strategically use the fat-coated hides as underlays or blankets. Imagine a stack of insulating blankets with waxed layers preventing cold air seeping through. Almost the exact principle behind modern sleeping bags that rely on synthetic fabrics and down feathers. This layering created a microenvironment where body heat was conserved expertly, making the seemingly impossible 72-hour heat source a reality. And here's where it gets even wilder. Because the snow cave walls themselves were usually so thick, up to 2 feet or more, they functioned like natural radiators. During the day, the sun's weak Arctic rays penetrated the snow, gently warming it. Then at night, the heat slowly radiated back inward, cushioning the interior space's temperature against rapid drops. This effect is similar to how double-glazed windows in your home trap heat inside during winter. Vikings unintentionally turned their shelters into giant heat exchangers, balancing the extreme outside cold with slow-release warmth from the environment itself. But all that warmth would vanish if moisture were allowed to build up. Dampness causes heat to escape quickly, and nothing chills you faster than wet skin or bedding. The Vikings knew this too well. To prevent condensation and trapped moisture, they designed their shelters to allow subtle airflow. Snow caves were built with small ventilation holes, and smoke from the peat embers filtered gently through these openings, carrying away humidity but not precious heat. Think of it as an ancient form of climate control, like opening a tiny window, just a crack to keep your heated room from turning into a sauna. The Vikings balanced airflow just right, ensuring their shelters stayed dry and warm at the same time, a sophisticated trick that modern backpackers only began perfecting centuries later. And it didn't stop there. Food and nutrition played a crucial supporting role in this snow-to-heat strategy. Eating a high-fat diet of seal blubber and fresh fish helped Vikings boost their internal metabolic furnace. This diet raised their core temperatures and gave them more energy to generate body heat naturally. Modern science shows that 70–75% of calories from fat can increase your basal metabolic rate significantly, something Vikings unknowingly applied daily to survive the cold. But even with snow insulation, slow-burning embers, fat-coated hides, ventilated shelters, and high-energy diets, you might wonder, how did the Vikings keep this setup going for days on end without fresh fuel or succumbing to exhaustion? The incredible answer involved the clever reuse of snow. By carefully layering fresh snow over the embers each day, they maintained insulation and controlled heat release perfectly. Like topping up your fireplace with logs just enough to keep the warmth alive without overwhelming the space or melting the shelter. This ongoing snow management was a bit like the classic campfire dance, feeding it just right to keep the glow going. Each replenishment of snow acted as a thermal capacitor, storing heat from the embers and releasing it slowly, sustaining comfortable temperatures for up to 72 hours. So next time you see snow blanketing the ground, remember, for the Vikings, snow wasn't just a cold enemy to battle. It was a secret weapon in their survival toolkit. They transformed frozen crust into a reliable, 3-day heat source, mixing science, nature, and sheer ingenuity in ways that still amaze us today. And just when you think that's the end of the story, wait till you hear how their brilliance in managing snow and heat laid the foundation for some of the most resilient shelters ever devised. Tricks that inspired everything from early Arctic exploration gear to today's advanced winter survival technology. But that, my friend, is a tale for the next part. Now, imagine the challenge of maintaining this delicate heat balance over an entire 3-day stretch with nothing but snow, slow-burning peat, and your own ingenuity. The Vikings weren't just lighting fires and hoping for the best. They engineered a full thermal ecosystem within the snow itself. Why? Because snow, when managed correctly, acts as a natural heat reservoir. By layering fresh snow each day over their smoldering embers and carefully packed snow walls, they effectively trapped and slowly released heat at a barely perceptible rate. Think of it like a rechargeable battery, but instead of electricity, it stored warmth, gently leaking it back into their shelter's airspace. The science behind this is fascinating. Snow's insulating power is maximized when it's dense and undisturbed, but if heated too rapidly, it melts, losing its air-trapping crystalline structure. So the Vikings mastered a steady, controlled warming, preventing collapse of their snow shell and preserving that precious pocket of life-sustaining heat for the critical 72 hours. It's like tuning a fireplace so precisely that the fire never dies out, but also never burns too hot to damage its surroundings. But here's something even more astounding. The Vikings also incorporated an ancient hydrothermal principle, all thanks to the unique properties of ice and snow interacting with smoldering heat sources. When peat or moss embers warm the underside of a snow layer, The generated heat initiates a slow melting process that produces a thin film of water beneath the snow crust. This water, in turn, seeps down and refreezes deeper in the snowpack, releasing latent heat as it crystallizes. This process, called freeze-thaw heat exchange, acts like a natural heat amplifier, redistributing warmth slowly through the snow over time. It's similar to modern geothermal systems that use the Earth's stored heat to warm buildings. But here it was snow, ice, and embers performing the same miracle hundreds of years before such technology existed. Viking ingenuity transformed frozen water into a dynamic thermal conductor, and this subtle interplay of melting, flowing, and refreezing released sustained warmth that no simple fire alone could achieve in such extreme conditions. Of course, they couldn't just rely on this natural snow-to-heat exchange alone. The Vikings were expert thermal architects and knew that the key to endurance was combining multiple layers of protection. One overlooked trick was their use of humidity regulation, something we still struggle with in modern outdoor gear. Moisture is the enemy of warmth. When your clothes or bedding get damp, your body heat evaporates into the air, chilling you rapidly. The Vikings cleverly designed ventilation shafts in their snow shelters, not just to manage smoke, but to allow subtle air circulation that prevented condensation from soaking their furs and hides. Imagine a tiny, carefully placed vent like a valve that keeps a car engine from overheating, but in the freezing cold, it worked to keep their space dry and comfortable. This balance of airtight insulation and just enough airflow is something that even today's high-tech sleeping bags try to replicate through breathable membranes and moisture-wicking fabrics. Only the Vikings did it thousands of years ago with holes chiseled into snow walls and an intuitive understanding of airflow. And when it came to the bedding itself, their innovation didn't stop at fat-coated hides. Vikings layered their sleeping areas with multiple animal pelts: bear, reindeer, and wolf fur, prized for their dense underfur and insulating dead air spaces. Each layer was arranged with the fur facing inward or outward, depending on the wind direction and moisture source, creating a microclimate that trapped rising body heat, yet allowed sweat to escape. Think of it as nature's version of a modular sleeping bag system, combining materials strategically for maximum thermal retention. The thick pelts lined with rendered fat further sealed this system, creating windproof, waterproof blankets that prevented chilling drafts in even the harshest Arctic winds that could reach speeds over 50 miles per hour. With this setup, Vikings could lie down and trust that their immediate environment would remain exponentially warmer than the -30 degrees F ice-cold storms raging outside, increasing survivability by an order of magnitude. But here's a mind-blowing detail. By blending the snow insulation with these animal fat treatments and bedding designs, Vikings effectively created what we'd now call a thermal battery system, implicit in a natural setting, one that required almost zero active maintenance once set up. The synergy of elements, slow-burning embers, snow walls packed to about 24 inches thick, layered pelts impregnated with fat, and carefully managed ventilation, served as a slow heat-release network that could keep their entire shelter warm for up to 72 hours without adding new fuel. Consider a modern electric heater running on 1,000 watts maintaining room temperature steadily for 3 days without refueling or recharging. Except instead of electricity, it was an intricate balance of biological materials and physics. This wasn't luck. It was an ancient form of sustainable heating genius forged through centuries of trial, error, and survival against unimaginable odds. And survival wasn't the only reason for mastery over snow and heat. These techniques had social and cultural significance, too. Warmth was life, but it was also community. Vikings would gather inside these snow shelters stealthily built along hunting routes or during raids, sharing body heat, stories, and plans for days. Their collective warmth inside snow-made sanctuaries didn't just save lives. It preserved the bonds that held their clans together under the brutal northern skies. Imagine huddling silently inside a snow cave after a hunt, the steady glow of ember peat glowing faintly, the scent of smoldering moss mingling with the crisp Arctic air, faces lit dimly, all trusting in a system that transformed the coldest element, snow, into the very fire that kept them alive. Yet this mastery of snow and embers wasn't just about winter warfare or survival. it spilled into the Vikings' exploration legacies. When Scandinavian explorers pushed beyond known territories into Greenland and even Iceland, they carried this thermal wisdom with them, adapting it to new, often more brutal conditions. The heat storage principles, snow layering, and fat smearing techniques evolved, influencing later Arctic explorers like Fridtjof Nansen and Roald Amundsen, who formalized these survival methods centuries later with modern gear. In essence, the Vikings' ancient interplay of snow and fire was a blueprint for human adaptation in cold environments, proof that innovation often arises from necessity and observation, rather than invention alone. Their legacy lives on every time someone survives an Arctic winter or a backcountry explorer hunkers down in a snow shelter designed with centuries-old wisdom. So, the next time you see snow sparkling under a pale sun, frozen and silent, remember, beneath that deceptive cold surface lies a secret store of warmth that only the most resourceful humans ever knew how to unlock. The Vikings weren't just brutal warriors, they were real pioneers of thermal science, long before thermodynamics had a name. They turned snow, the ultimate symbol of winter's cruelty, into a life-giving heat source. 3 days, 72 hours of sustainable warmth carved directly from the freezing landscape. It's an incredible testament to human creativity and resilience. Every shivering night these Norsemen faced was met with a toolkit of tricks made from peat, animal fat, snow, fur, and sheer willpower. All these elements combined to enact a symphony of survival, a delicate dance between fire and ice that allowed them to endure where most would perish. Theirs was not just a fight against cold, but a mastery of nature's contrasts, proving that even in the darkest, coldest times, human ingenuity can kindle a flame bright enough to last. And while we live in a world warmed by pipes, electricity, and insulation engineered in labs, the memory of those Viking heat tricks remains a powerful reminder. Sometimes, survival depends not on conquering nature but understanding and coaxing her. It's about turning impossible challenges into manageable realities, transforming even snow into a 3-day furnace of life-sustaining warmth. That's a lesson as timeless as humanity itself, inspiring anyone who's ever faced cold, darkness, and danger. So, as you bundle up tonight or watch a snowstorm cascade outside your window, take a moment to appreciate the ancient secret beneath those frozen flakes, the miraculous, enduring fire hidden within snow. The Vikings did it, and so can we, by honoring their extraordinary legacy of adaptation, courage, and wisdom. Because in the end, survival is as much about the mind as it is about the body, and these Norse masters knew how to harness both to transform snow from a frozen enemy into a fiery friend.